Hello and welcome to Let's Talk podcast, enriching lives through a podcast. Just to set the context, I was talking to one of my friend and colleague few weeks back, and one thing leads to another, and we were he was reflecting back around his day-to-day operations in terms of his job, and he is in the middle level management. And he
Mhm.
was talking about what are the key things he was concerned about, what is working right, what is working wrong. And he also mentioned, which really sticks to my mind, about we have so much less content in terms of maybe a podcast, articles about the middle level management people. There are a lot
Mm,
of information about how to become a leader, how to become a manager, how to become a transition from maybe an individual contributor to managing personalities and leading people. But what about people who are already in this realm and they want to excel? Because again, as a part of the growth mindset, you have to constantly evolve, you have to
yeah.
constantly learn. So that is something which I was thinking about it. And before we get into further discussion, let me just share some statistics about it. Uh, in an average, based on one of the author from leading from the middle, his name is Scott Motz, if I can pronounce his last name correctly. Middle managers account for 22% of the variation in revenue. Replacing a bad middle manager increases the productivity by 12%. And based on the current ongoing layoffs and all, this is the third sentence is pretty important. Employees with a strong leader are 20% less likely to leave when offered a job elsewhere.
Mm,
Now, apart from that, what is the flip side of it? What is the struggles of the middle level managers? And this is a pretty high number. And 51%
mhm.
says they worry about their work constantly, which is a very big number from if you see the organization perspective. 43% describe their job pressure as excessive. And they say that struggle to switch roles from their boss to the peers to the reportees, it really takes a toll on that.
Mhm.
That really helps me to discuss this topic in depth. And that's why I reached out to a wonderful human being because I have an interaction. He had a session in Microsoft. And I was like, okay, let me just reach out to him and see that if he has this any perspective about it. And he was graciously enough to accept my request.
Mhm.
So, Larnell Vickers, welcome to the show.
Thank you, thank you. I'm super happy to be on the show, and again, I want to acknowledge you for reaching out to me, and inviting me onto the show. So excited to be here.
Definitely. So, just to give a brief introduction about you, so you are, I think, two words which explains you is the impact and influence. You empower people to realize their untapped potentials.
Yeah.
And you are also, I think, the top rated LinkedIn career coach and executive recruiter. And there are so many things out there, which I'll definitely let you explain better than me. But before that, I saw that you used to be a high school teacher
Mhm.
and then you moved to different roles. What prompted you to be the place you are in and we are having the conversation today?
That's a good question. So, right after I finished school, I went into Teach for America. So I actually taught for 2 years within the core experience in my hometown
Mhm.
of Miami, Florida, and taught for 2 years. I taught high school English at Booker T. Washington High School. A transformational experience, being able to support students not only in their academics but also going off to college. And so I was actually at their high school graduation, speaking at their high school graduation, and seeing them off. And so a phenomenal experience. But when I got very clear with myself and the work that I wanted to do and the impact that I wanted to have, it was in recruitment. And so I went off and I moved from Miami to New York City, and the rest is history. I've been in New York for over 10 years now, and I've been doing recruitment work for 10 plus years, and coaching, of course, I came down the road, but I love the work that I do and supporting folks and being able to not only identify what's next for them in their career, but also be able to tap into opportunities. Yeah.
That's great, and I would like to compliment your website. It's amazing,
Oh,
and
thank you.
I would recommend everyone to kind of visit the website. Can you just help the audience to know what is the website link?
Yeah, so it's larnellvickers.com. On the site, people can learn more about our different programs. We offer different folks, depending on where they're at in their career, how we can best support them. If it's from resume, making sure we're optimizing your LinkedIn or resume, but also to helping you land the next role. So all that's on the site. And yeah, definitely check it out, larnellvickers.com.
Definitely. And the reason I specifically mentioned about your website, because I observe few things which I would like to kind of share, and let me know if that resonates with you, or that is maybe one of the reasons you have created that website. It's pretty sleek in the way it's pretty professionally created, and I see a lot of pictures of you in
Mhm.
different backgrounds and all, which shows me that apart from the coaching, you are also a firm believer of how you present yourself
Mhm.
as a first way of, I mean, obviously when we try to reach out to the people, the first one of the senses is the eye contact or what we see about it,
Yeah.
right? And
Mhm.
then we try to kind of dig deeper on that. Is it something which you kind of thought about making this website that it should be pleasing to the eyes to get some attention, and obviously then obviously people try to learn more about you?
No, for sure, for sure. No, that's a great question, and I love thinking back to when I was first designing that site, and I worked with a website designer, and essentially it's thinking about, okay, like what's your brand? What's your brand present? Like what's the look like and feel of it? And what you see on the site. I mean, I would love to get your thoughts on how you would describe it, but it's like sophistication, it's elegant, it's very much.
Mm.
Being able to showcase just the professionalism and so when I think about myself and the brand and what I wanted to portray, it was that. And there was so many different directions I think that we were thinking through of how to best do it, but it was that in that direction. So I would say for not just a website, but for anything, it's just really thinking about like your brand presence, how you want to show up, because it's not just about what you say or what's on paper, but also how you show up and what people see. So
Yeah.
got very clear on that. And we have several different brands and several different websites and other services, and so you'll kind of see that same element and vibe and presence on our other websites and other brands that we do. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. And this is something I'm a firm believer personally as well. The way how you create your personal brand, you showcase yourself, the very first impression is so important.
Yeah, for
So that's
sure.
why I was like, okay, I'll definitely let Larnell know about it, that the website is amazing. So that's
For
great.
sure.
So now let's get into the topic of what we were discussing about. So as you must have listened, right, some of the statistics which I mentioned about it,
Mhm.
and we have seen that there are a lot of information about that, and you must have seen a lot of clients as well who are either aspiring leaders, who are already leaders in a certain capacity, and then they have to move, or I would say evolve from one place or point A to point B
Mhm.
to progress their career. So maybe I'll kind of ask you, what's your thought about that? What we just kind of I started off with some statistics and share some of the insights of one of my friend here.
No, for sure, for sure. So a couple of things, and I'll kind of just like lay the foundation here for this conversation
Yes.
and what's happening within corporate spaces. So one, a lot of companies focus on the entry point of being able to get entry level professionals, since the reason why you have internships, apprenticeships, folks and associate analysts getting those in, because that's your talent. That's the talent that you want to continue to grow. And so you have a lot of focus and programs around that. And then, like you were saying, you have a lot of emphasis on the executive leadership. And so there's a lot of executive leadership councils, there's conferences, there are networking events that are happening amongst C-suite leaders as well. But it's that mid component that we can't forget about, that's so critical. And when you think about it, your mid managers are the folks who are running the company, right? They're essentially the folks who are training, developing your people managers, and as well as having to manage up, sideways, down, and really ensure that the day-to-day operations of what is happening within those different business verticals are happening and moving forward. What tends to happen is that as you are earlier in your career, what actually gets you into those roles is actually knocking out the ballpark when it comes to the skill set, the deliverable, the objectives, the OKRs, like making sure that you are outstanding at the work that you do, right? So then you become a people manager. But to go from a mid manager to the executive level, it takes trust, it takes relationship building. It's not so much about doing the right job, right? Because a lot of times people think that they need to put their head down and just do good work. But there's a whole other realm that comes towards entering into the executive level leadership roles, and it's trust. It's trust, it's building relationships, is knowing that based upon the information that's going to be provided to you, based upon the understanding of what's happening in the inner workings of the company, and how you're showing up and what's your role to play in that to move things forward, that you can be trusted, that you have the relationships built to be able to move the needle forward. That's a different level, right? And so I think sometimes people might think, oh, let me just push into doing good work. That will get me to the C-suite. And in most cases, it probably won't. You'll probably just become a senior director or a senior VP, right? You'll probably get bump and pay, but maybe not get to those levels of C-suite. And so you gotta focus on the relationship pieces. It's not so much on the OKRs and hitting those at the ballpark.
Yep, yep. What I'm hearing is relationship is obviously what is one of the most important aspect,
Um,
as you mentioned about thinking about a growth perspective.
yes.
In order to kind of discuss further on that. So as you mentioned that obviously the trust is important. What's your perspective of people? So there are two sets of middle level, or I would say maybe the entry level and the middle level.
Mhm,
The middle level may have a subordinates as their managers, and
mhm,
obviously on the top as well, whom they are reporting to.
mhm.
And then on the entry level, which it seems that is one of the toughest job as well, because they have the IC level, the individual contributors, and then the top they have the managers, senior managers. What do you think about what are the key things, the challenges they face based on your experience of juggle through and balance through different hierarchical structure and also meeting their expectations?
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. So I'll tell you this, right? At the end of the day, right, when you're starting at, let's say, entry, mid manager, mid senior level, right? When you're at those components, the hierarchy goes slimmer and slimmer and slimmer and slimmer, right? There only could be one of some sort of role. You might have a manager or a boss, and they might be in their role for 4 or 5 years. And if it's a good company, you have sometimes folks who stay in roles for 6, 7, 8 years.
Yeah.
Also, it could be where you're performing and you're doing great work, but at the same time, based upon who you are, based upon the leadership that's needed, based upon that skill set that's needed, it might not be where you're on the trajectory to actually grow your career within that particular company. And so at the end of the day, you got to take full ownership, full responsibility for your career. And sometimes it's tough. It's tough because you built relationships with people. You actually might like the company. You actually might like the work. But if you're not growing, if you're not accelerating your career, right? And again, this is in conversations with managers, doing a lot of deep self reflection. If you're not growing, if you're not elevating, right, it's really important for you to really think about what might be outside of that company and to really start looking outside and really being able to move yourself forward. And folks, and there's a lot of data on this around like the folks who are able to increase their pay, right? The folks who are able to actually leverage and actually grow their career the fastest are people who are able to be very on the pulse of their career and being able to like move when needed or stay when it's needed, right? Because they can actually grow their career internally because of the approvals, being able to build networks and relationships, and the skills that's needed in that moment is actually the skills that's needed for the company to continue to elevate and grow, that you can continue to have that growth trajectory over time. So it's the deep reflection, it's the pausing, it's the keeping a pulse on your career and taking full ownership and responsibility to know how to pivot or when to stay in those moments and times.
Yeah. So I think what you mentioned to summarize that, yeah, self-reflection, self-awareness
Mhm.
is one of the thing because everything starts from you.
Yes.
And most of the time, we always try to look outside and try to influence the thing. But eventually, as you try to more self-reflect and try to, I would say I'm a big proponent of reading books. So
Yeah,
read good books and obviously have a good company that you understand that many things comes within you, rather than going and looking outside for some solutions.
hmm,
So that you mentioned about the skills, you mentioned about the self-reflection, you also mentioned about some of the trust. Now, in that perspective, how exactly, what kind of skills specifically focused to middle level management people who already have certain skills because that's why they get to
yeah,
this
for sure.
stage,
Hmm.
right? Now, because this is a continuous evolution, you cannot like learn it all. I would say not know it all, rather learn it all. So, in that perspective, what's your suggestion? What kind of skill set specifically focused to the middle level management people should have in order to progress and also have a right balance between the people, the subordinates, and their bosses?
Hmm. No, for sure, for sure. So in most cases, for most companies, you have to do the role before you actually get into the role, right? Right. In most cases, you have to prove yourself that you actually have the skill set, the ability, the tools necessary to actually execute, even before you actually get promoted into that role.
Yeah.
So really think about that, right? And how do you actually do that? You actually do that by taking on um, stretch projects, stretch opportunities. You extend yourself beyond your team, right? You actually put yourself in the intersection of actually getting in the actual room with other leaders, other managers. You extend beyond your bubble, right? Because for most people, they'll stay within their bubble, their team, their manager. But your manager, yes, has to be in your corner for you to move forward, but that person has to have allies. They have to have other people that are going to get behind you as well. It can't just be your manager, especially when you're trying to get towards a C-suite level. So you have to put yourself at the intersection of other leaders, other managers, stretch projects, stretch opportunities, growing yourself even beyond the actual day-to-day duties and responsibilities so that you find yourself actually doing the work before you actually get promoted into the work, right? So then it becomes an easy transition to say, yes, it's time for you to then move into that role, right? And so
Exactly.
how do you actually start? Again, just being strategic around how you best do that, right? And move
Yes.
yourself in that direction.
So let me give you one perspective. This is something which I wrestle with and try to think a lot. As you rightly mentioned, that the growth is important. You have to stretch yourself. It's important. You have to get all the skills,
Yeah,
which is obviously it's important. Uh, but at the same time, what about the growth mindset? So, for example, we talk a lot about growth mindset. And I was reading in one of the stories, for example, like without naming the college. So there's one of the best colleges in the United States, and they in one of the circumstances, they took 10 students after filtering out the students worldwide, and obviously they have the best SAT scores. They have been kind of recommended by scholars and renowned professors, and which have read and published a lot of articles. And when they come to that particular university, and they found that okay, they are much better advanced students because they're already like seniors who are studying there, and they are professors who are, and some of them are even nominated for the Nobel Prize.
awesome.
So if you see those kind of people, there are two kind of mindset. So the fixed mindset is like, okay, I know it all. I mean, I have learned, I'm here because I'm like the top 10 people across the world. And now I would be like, what's this is tough. I mean, I learned it everything. Now how do I do it? I'm already in the midst of these big people, these intelligent people, and they get nervous. The growth mindset people would be, I'm here for a cause. I'm here to learn it. I'm not here to show that how perfect I am,
No, for
right?
sure.
So in that case, uh, I would learn and then try to keep learning, because success and failure is the difference between learning and non-learners, right? Or
Mhm.
learning from their failures, which we always say. So, what's your perspective like when people get into the next part? Again, what I mentioned is getting to the question is when people get to the next level of their career, what would be expectation from the people who are hiring? Because is it like they should know it all, they should have all the skills, or what are the key things they look for that, okay, this guy or this girl would be a good candidate for the next level?
No, great question. So a couple of things is this, that there are the mindsets that a leader takes on when entering into a new role before actually getting into the role and being interviewed by that hiring manager.
Hmm.
Because at the end of the day, what's going to support you best is to have that growth mindset when you get into the role for that person who's entering into that role, right? Yes, you've learned all these things, you have all these experiences, but you're coming from a growth mindset around, I want to learn, I want to get curious, I want to ask questions, I want to challenge my own beliefs or understandings of the work or how the work should be done, and then best then make decisions. Even though you have the decision making power, to still understand, is it the actual best decision to make given the context? But I'll tell you this, as putting on the recruiter hat, as a recruiter, as someone who's worked with hiring managers, is being able to, before you step into that role, being able to have the qualifications, the skill sets needed to be able to enter into that role.
Yes,
And
that's true.
you have to speak directly, right? It's a different type of energy, a different way of showing up, right? You know, getting higher and being in the role versus actually interviewing for a role, to showcase the ability that you can do the job, that you can do it come day one, that you have the skill sets, the mindsets, the abilities, the talents, and the people leadership skills to be able to do the role, right? With the ability to still be humble to say you want to learn and grow. But that's going to be really, really important to showcase that. And so understand the balance. And I know that's tough for I think for people, because it's two different ways of being and how you're showing up and how you're interacting um, each and every time. But I think that's very key when it comes to interviewing, of being able to position yourself in that way.
Yes, I agree, and that's why I kind of lean towards this question to you, because you used to be, I don't know if you are still the recruiter, and
Mhm.
you have that mindset of like, what when people try to strive for a different role or try to get into a different hierarchical level in their organizations, that what are the things. And at the same time, what I mentioned, that growth mindset is obviously important, but it's not the only thing. That is a part of the
Mhm.
whole puzzle that you should be having, but you have to show the willingness that you have learned those skill set as well.
Mhm. Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah. So now next question would be, okay, we discuss about what are the skills and mindset is required. Now let's get to some of the tactical guidance in terms of, okay, I want to build up my executive presence. I
Mhm.
have to build up my brand value in
Yes.
my organization while doing my work as managing people, and obviously trying to at least meeting the expectation in terms of what is my primary responsibilities are. What's
Mhm.
your guidance on that part? How do we create those executive presence or personal branding within the organization?
Yeah, no, for sure. So one, I would tell you this, it starts with deep self-awareness around who
Mhm.
you are, right?
Mhm.
Because in a lot of cases, when you're trying to move up in your career, you're looking external to the examples that are around you, right? You're trying to see what success looks like. And in some ways, like mimic or emulate that, to be able to have, okay, these are the signals of what I need to show up, how I need to talk, how I need to actually present to be able to move myself forward. But there comes a point in time in everyone's career where you have to do the deep digging, the self reflection,
Mhm.
the ability to understand oneself deeply and understand what are your values, what are the things that you are, of who you are and what you want to be and how you want to show up and how you want to communicate. What are your leadership principles and values, right? And so that really takes a lot of self reflection. That's a true leader. That's a great leader that actually is able to really articulate that and really understand that. That has to be the case before you do any type of branding work. A lot of people dive right into branding work and want to think about colors and, you know, start talking to folks and doing all these different things. But you really got to get very clear for yourself and stand firm in that, right? And people will respect that. And so from there, you build a brand based upon your principles, based upon your values that are true to you. And then from there, people will then see that and be able to really align themselves with that and help you and support you in moving you forward in your career.
uh, can you provide some examples, like based on your experience, like how how, I mean, obviously, once we, for example, as you mentioned rightly, that you have to be self-aware, reflect, and understand what is your philosophies, what
Yep.
is your core values in your life, because that drives your true north star
Mhm.
in your life. So that being said, if I am a middle level manager, what are the things in generic term? Again, it totally depends on the organization and project basis based on your experience. What are the key things we should be doing in order to make sure that I'm on the right path of developing my brand value
Mhm.
or my executive presence?
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. So a couple of things of this is being able to, once you define that for yourself, right, those values, those principles, is really being able to develop your brand. And I would say this is not just internal, but also external. And I would say it's probably best to do it external than to then go internal. So
Yeah.
being able to share voice, share perspective, share insights, go on panels, go to conferences, speak, go back to your college and give back and speak. Being able to be a thought leader of some sort, being able to really showcase just who you are, your expertise, and give that to others. That goes a long, long way because people see that both externally as well as internally, right? So that's one. The second thing is this. I would say this, that internally it's really about other people speaking to your brand than you going around and actually speaking towards it, right? Just be about it, right? Live it out, right? Into your values, your principles, your work, your ethics, how you show up, how you communicate, what you deliver on, and really push that forward. Your brand is just who you are, right? It lives out, it precedes you. It's the things that people say about you when you're not in the room. So really live it out, right? And people will speak to your brand, right? And then really understand what are people saying. Like usually mentors, managers will tell you, this is what people are saying about you. Be very aware of that and how you actually um, tailor that, curate that based upon your actions, based upon how you're showing up, based upon how you're communicating, so that it's all in alignment based upon how you view yourself and how others are viewing you.
Yeah. So just to summarize what you mentioned is obviously you have to, first of all, get out of your comfort zone,
Yep.
reach out to the people, communicate, go to different networking events
Mhm.
outside or inside, and try to make sure that your, first of all, obviously, the first thing is you have to establish your core values and principles so that whatever you speak would not contradict later on. So
Exactly.
this is something which I have seen a lot of time. People say that, okay, I'm afraid speaking in the public forum, like what we are discussing, right?
Yeah.
And the reason is because if I say something, it can go against me later on.
Right.
Then I would like, then you have to spend more time. That why exactly, if your core values are the same, then everything boils down to converges to the same core values and philosophies. You don't have to worry about that,
You do not have to worry
right?
about that. Right. Right.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. You rightly mentioned, to again, coming back to your point, is that again, spend more time, make sure that you reach out to the different people, make network, be in your panels, which is important. I think within the organizations also, if there's any opportunities, you can reach out to the panel. And I think I would also add one more thing is try to solve a problem of your
Mhm.
leaders, because
Yes.
again, they are also human beings, right?
Yeah, make
They
them look good.
yes, so they need help, and if you can jump on when they need help, this is one of the, I would say, one of the best ways to catch their attention, that okay, Larnell is doing really a good job, or Sarv is doing a really good job, and you can elevate you as just another middle level manager to maybe a preferred manager to reach out for any problem solving tactics over there.
Yeah, for sure. Let me tell you this: the best conversations are the ones that are offline, right?
Yeah.
Those are the phone calls that when your leader calls you up at 6, 7 o'clock or on the weekend and say, "Hey, I want to just like talk with you. I want to pass thing by you before I approve or do something." That is a great signal. That is a great signal that you're showing trust, that you're showing that you're a go-to person.
Hmm.
It's those offline conversations that really matter the most. Hey, let's go golfing, or let's go here. Or like, those conversations when you're actually in those activities or doing those things help. They support.
Hmm.
So, definitely help to solve their problems for sure.
Yes,
Make them look good. So
that's great. What's your insight? Obviously, you are a coach, but I would still like to know that what's your insight about the importance of having mentors, coaches in your life, irrespective of your stages in your leadership journey?
Hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. So you really want to make sure you have mentors, coaches, sponsors, people who are going to be in your corner at the end of the day. And I'll tell you this, that it's about being very intentional and being on the lookout for it. This is not something you want to force or just make happen. You want it to be like a very genuine connection. And it happens naturally, but I think sometimes people might miss the opportunity to continue to cultivate or nurture a relationship in that way. Um, and so it's really important to identify, okay, this person, based upon my connection, based upon my interactions, based upon how we work together, how we're creating for impact in the world, could be a mentor of mine, right? Or it could be a sponsor. And so, as time progresses and as you're building those relationships, like being to have those conversations, make the ask of people when appropriate, but pay attention, right? Be intentional, right? As you are out in the world and as you're working and doing good work, working on projects around who could be a potential mentor, sponsor, and make the ask. Don't be afraid to.
Yes, exactly. So, as you mentioned about being afraid to or ask, which helps me to kind of get into the one of the other aspects about having some kind of a toxicity in the environment, in the corporate environment. So, for example, I'm pretty much having all the positive attitude. I'm totally driven. However, I'm not getting that kind of support from my boss, from my manager, from my leader, which helps me to move from point A to point B, or I would say just to get a different promotion to a senior leadership here. How do we identify that? I recently had this another discussion about the toxic environment, where we discuss in depth on that. But just want to know from your perspective, how do we identify that? Do I have to stick around more? As you mentioned briefly about, we can move over to a different organization or a different department or a different arm in the same organization. How do we find that something is not going right and this is maybe a time to take some decisions in terms of making a next step in my career because of not getting adequate support from my peers or maybe from my higher ups?
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. So a couple of things is this. I think it's really important for you personally just to do goal setting, right, around where you want your career to be, knowing that there is life that happens, right? So, but doing that personal goal setting, so you know where you want to be. Then two is communicating, when appropriate, when it comes to performance review time or those times when you're working with your manager around how you want to grow to align with your manager around what they see for you and where you are looking to go. And then as well as being a check in on progress to go around how you're progressing, how you're moving forward. Now the thing is this: when you're seeing yourself not progressing or moving forward, right, it's about having real open and honest conversations with your manager. If you have that relationship with your manager, if you don't, right, it's really for you to really take stock around what's happening based upon conversations or people around you or circumstances around, is this the best place for me? And again, I know it's tough sometimes, right? Because sometimes you love your work or you love the people you're working with, but to make those decisions to say, hey, it might be where I need to like look outside, right? I'll tell you this: when everything aligns, when it comes to your manager, the work, the people, your intention, your purpose and power, everything aligns, you will skyrocket in the company, you will grow in the company, right? And it won't be where it's you're not sure about it. People will tap you and say, yes, we want to actually work with you. This is what we see for you. You'll feel that energy. If you're not feeling that, right, it's really important to take stock and then to say, okay, do I stay here and maybe give it another year, or do I actually move on? And then go forward from there. But either way, it's really making sure that you're very clear for yourself around what's going to best support you and how you want to best grow your career.
Yeah, that's great. Setting up goals is so important. And
Yeah.
as you mentioned, you that we have to really align ourselves across the different sectors of the assistance. At the same time, I know that if someone would be listening or watching this, aligning it's fine, but it's not always possible, which I believe as well that sometimes not possible that everything really falls into their respected pieces, and you will get a good picture out there. But at the same time, again, going back to what we were discussing, that it's important to understand that even if it doesn't align, you have to really have that awareness to understand what the things are going wrong. If,
Mhm.
as you mentioned, that you have to have communication with your managers, but what happens if your manager is not supported? So
Okay.
that's where you have to take some decisions, that do
Yeah.
you want to still stick around and maybe you demoralize, which eventually shows maybe in your professional life, in your personal life, or you really have to take decisions. And that's what I learned somewhere, that try to make decisions quick, because once you have your north star, you easily make decisions. And when you make decisions, then eventually, even they are wrong or right, that time will tell. But once you take decisions, I mean, you will try to make them right. That is the human tendency, right? So instead of having indecisiveness, you have to make some call. And these things happen definitely when you are much more self aware, having a right communication, as you mentioned, and reach out to the people.
Mhm.
So, that being said, let's go to the last section of our conversation. I would say that what is one misconception which you have heard from your people whom you coach, or your experience about leadership?
Mhm. Yeah. So I think one of the misconceptions around leadership is that leadership is given, right? And so in terms of the respect that is just given,
Mhm.
and that people will follow because of the position that you're in, and that it's just given. But in reality, it's really earned, right? It really is earned. It's really earned through relationships. It's earned through role modeling. It's earned through doing the work side by side with the folks that you're leading.
Mhm.
It is actually leading by example. That you, at the end of the day, are serving the folks that you lead, not vice versa, right? Where everyone is like you're serving you, right? It really is where you're serving your folks. And so I really do believe that I think some of the misconceptions might be that um, because I'm in this position, people should respect me, should listen to me, and should just do what I tell them to do because I'm in this role.
So true. And again, position and will not be forever. And if you think that because position brings respect, then at the same time, respect will not be forever in that as well. So that's such a nice point, that you have to build your personality in such a way that, irrespective where you are, people will respect you. So, that being said, last question. Any reference, any one of your favorite book or books you would like to refer or recommend to the people who are in this journey of getting into the executive level? Uh, please, yeah, feel free to chime in.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, there's so many good books. I would say one because I'm a recruiter, so I'll mention this one because when you're leading, you're also
Mhm.
having higher teams. Is a book called Who, and so really it's thinking about the A-list players on your team and who you need to hire and how you need to build teams and what competencies you need to evaluate for and how you actually form teams based upon the different expertise levels of different people. And so it's called Who. I forget the name of the author, but a phenomenal book to definitely read when it comes to building and leading and developing teams. So definitely will recommend that book for folks out there.
Cool. And this is, I think it's different from, there's one other book called Who Not How.
Okay. Yeah. I think I've heard that one. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So Who, okay, definitely I'll look into that. Any other reference?
Um, any other references? I would just shout out into like different podcasts. Definitely, I'm all about. I mentioned we're into recruiting, but also I'm a coach, and I'm really big about just mindsets and
Mhm.
beliefs, and really aligning yourself towards that. And so, always Maston Kip is definitely a great coach to also check out. He does a lot of mindset work and really helping you to think about your ways of being and how you're showing up and how you're leading. He has a few books out there as well, but I definitely was to shout him out as well.
Definitely. So that being said, Larnell, thank you so much for providing the time to provide some kind of insights about the people who are working towards getting to a senior leadership role. And I'm very hopeful that people really learn a lot about it. And that being said, I'll wish you all the best for your future endeavors. And yeah, thank you for your time here.
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you so much just for the work that you're doing for this podcast, for getting information out to folks. It's phenomenal. It really is. And so
Really
thank you
appreciate it.
for having me on the show.
Sure. Thank you so much.